Mark, I'll start with you. Why are mobile companies now targeting emerging markets? Are developed markets saturated at this stage?
I suppose if we look, at what's happened across the globe, mobile markets have become saturated. So companies have started to look for other ways of doing things. They've looked at trying to generate new revenues. They've looked at trying to get into new businesses. And now the last dimension is you've got to get into new geographies. And a lot of those new geographies are becoming saturated themselves or becoming, quite well, distributed. If you look across China, India, Latin America, there's quite a lot of activity happening. And the last remaining part of this emerging world is essentially Africa. So the focus now is on Africa.
Arthur, is that your view as well? Don't you think there's still high value add products we can be selling to developed markets, or should we be targeting emerging markets like Africa?
No, it's very much the case that the tremendous opportunities in data and content products for developed markets. But those are difficult products to sell, and the business models are still a little uncertain. And the delivery in terms of revenues and profits on those business models are even more uncertain. So a far more certain market is the African market. And the fact that mobile penetration is still so low in Africa compared to other territories, and yet the rate of growth is so high, suggests that there's still tremendous benefit to be had from mobile companies targeting Africa. But not just in terms of mobile subscribers, it's also those additional products where they almost use Africa as a testing ground. When you look at mobile money products, for example, Africa leads the world in that area. So that's a great way of testing the field as well.
Sean, how should companies be adapting their products to fit into a market like Africa? Because I'm sure the needs are much different from European markets, for instance.
I guess there's a two-part play here. One is they have existing products that are already launched, understand how to be used, and I think that allows a very easy entry into markets. Then there's the development, particularly for those particular African markets or emerging markets, and that's based, I guess, upon needs, from social needs to what the network would be able to provide. If it's very heavy data usage requirements and the network isn't well infrastructured, then obviously a lower content need. So I think it offers great opportunity, and we've certainly seen great deals of new innovation coming through. So Arthur spoke about banking and the likes of M-Pesa, which we've seen many of the banks in South Africa are chasing those same models, either for our own markets over here, but also into Africa, and from Africa back into our markets.
Mark, do you think companies really have to adapt their product offerings if they are looking at growth in Africa?
Absolutely. I mean, the client is the important part here. So the customer out there is absolutely different in different markets. And it's not just a difference in emerging markets compared to mature markets. It's different within each of those markets as well. An interesting point, based on the discussion we're having now, is that voice, there's always been a comparison between voice traffic and data traffic within the telecommunications space. And voice has always been where the revenue's been generated, and the majority of that revenue. And in December, the voice traffic was finally overtaken by data traffic on these mobile networks. So it's an interesting change in the evolution of telecommunications. Data traffic is definitely at lower margins, but just in terms of the volumes, telcos now need to look at what they do with this, how they do it. Is it just a risk that people are using voice over IP, or is there something else that they can do with this, grow their revenues by using the new data traffic?
Arthur, why are we seeing the switch from voice to data, and are companies keeping up with this change?
Companies aren't quite keeping up with it. They don't realize the appetite for data if the pricing comes down to a reasonable level. And one of the reasons for it is that fixed line access to the internet is still very limited. In South Africa, for instance, we have 4.3 million fixed line subscribers, and that's come down from a high of 5.5 million, and it keeps going down. So it means that only a small proportion of the population, in fact, has access to fixed line broadband. So wireless broadband is clearly the growth area, and we've seen that in our research as well. In our mobility study over the past year, we've seen very, very clearly that in the coming years, the mobile products are going to have to be very strongly geared towards serving the needs of people who don't have fixed line access and want broadband access.
Are mobile products keeping up with this change, Sean, in your view?
I think they are. I mean, if anything, to support both Mark and Arthur's comment, has given wonderful opportunity for content development, application development, social media. I mean, I understand why there's less voice happening right now. I mean, I just look at people SMSing. I get more SMSs than I do telephone calls now. And so certainly there's a lower cost to transact, but a certain uptake in terms of the quantum of information flow between parties. So yeah.
But now you deal with handset makers. How are they adapting to these changes?
I think the handset manufacturers, certainly as you go into Africa or into emerging markets, it's typically a different type of handset, so certainly a little bit more robust, certainly a lower selling price point, but they need to be able to handle the type of content development that's happening, probably at a more rapid pace than what any form of infrastructural development is taking place.
Of course, Mark, Sean did mention M-Pesa a little while ago. What sorts of other tools do Africans need on their handsets? What are they looking for here? What are they using communications for?
I mean, just to firstly pick on what Sean said, in terms of what device is used within Africa or within emerging markets in general. And the device, emerging market users are looking for high-end devices at low cost. They want the same functionality.
How do you do that, though? How do you give them a high-end device at a low cost?
Well, there are a lot of examples already in the markets where some of the possibly some of the advanced features, but also some of the quality standards, some of the suppose if you're doing it on bulk scale, you can try and get some leverage there as well. But the manufacturers are becoming quite innovative in bringing down those costs of the devices. Nokia, for example, had the E range, the E 71, 72, those, and then all of a sudden they brought out a low cost E63. The casing was made out of different material, looked the same, had the same sort of functionality, but it was meant at the lower end of the market. So I mean, we're seeing a lot of that as well. So the consumers do want to use a lot of the same products, but they do need to do it at a better cost.
Yeah, what's really interesting, having spent some time in African markets, is you're absolutely right. You have the original equipment manufacturers that will bring their ranges in, but there is a spirit of entrepreneurship. So we've seen a lot of product that's shipped out of the east. So when I'm in Computer Village in Nigeria, or in Lagos, you see real top-end devices. The fact that you might be 10,000 miles away from a metropolitan area doesn't mean you don't have access to information. You know what's happening. I mean, I've seen handsets that are able to manage television. I haven't seen those in emerging or in emerged markets of the likes of Santon City, but I've seen them in Computer Village in Lagos.
But Arthur, do you think African users are as sophisticated as any other users of mobile telecommunications?
They would like to be. I spoke at a conference in Soweto a few days ago where during the break I was chatting with people and I was amazed to see how many of them had Blackberries, for example. And one of them was demonstrating a video that he had made, demonstrating it on his Blackberry, although he'd obviously made it on other devices. But what was very clear was that this was an aspirational brand for people who were up-and-coming entrepreneurs, creators, whatever the case might be. So people want it, even if they don't have it. In deep rural areas, of course, it's still all about voice, and data is a long way away. But content can be used to, in fact, drive education, not just about the use of the device, but education generally in rural and deep rural areas. So we're looking to see more of a content play and an emphasis on education from manufacturers, from networks, and the various other players in the industry.
Well,